Yeah, so why is this talk relevant for you, especially before the lunch break in 20 minutes? Because as Rainer said, I mean, this Hive is about profitability. And this year we actually worked on a couple of profitability projects. And I think our track record, I think I actually have to point to the laptop to make it work. Awesome. So this year we identified, let's do it like this. We identified 10 million in EBITDA. And I mean, the output itself is a bit meaningless if you don't know how much we actually put in to this effort. And we invested 5,000 hours into identifying 10 million in EBITDA improvements. So that means that our teams at Project A, for the teams that we work with, we identified roughly 2,000 euros per hour for every hour that we worked this year. So I think it's actually pretty cool. Yeah, you can take pictures if you want. The slide is also going to be there later on in a second. Because this is essentially what Rainer said. This was not a one-time success. We did it repeatedly. And today, in the 15 minutes I have, I want to share with you as much as I can. So, doing this again. Not working anymore. Yes. So actually, all the slides that you see today that we built internally they are built with a tool called Beautiful AI. It makes building slides a lot faster. So that's also about profitability. If you do more with less, it works really good. Like when you build the slides, it's a bit cumbersome when you get to present them. But I think AI will figure that out at some point. So what is the Phoenix method about? Why does it work? Because it's a team effort. It's not we come in as consultants, we work within teams. Each work stream that we set up, and that can be marketing, can be sales, can be product, can be tech. We have so many experts, but we never work alone. We always work in tandems. That means one specialist from our team, so for example, Luke and his team, like our marketing director that you saw earlier in the opening, pairs up with someone from your company, from your marketing team. Phoenix is intense. It's 10 weeks, and essentially during these 10 weeks, your teams get an additional workbench that is available 40 plus hours a week. This workbench wants to be utilized, so that means there are a lot of questions, a lot of analyses, a lot of interviews, a lot of interaction between us and your company. That means on top of the workload that's already there, we have to identify potential, we have to talk, we have to analyze. So it's really intense throughout the 10 weeks time frame. But the best thing about it is it's repeatable. It's not like a one-time effort. It doesn't work for just one company or just one industry. We saw that it worked for printing companies with a B2B context. We saw that it works for healthcare, for real estate, for the travel industry. So different backgrounds, different business models, and it worked. And today, yeah, this is called a cliffhanger. We want to talk about idea evolution because that's at the core of the Phoenix methodology. And we think that ideas are plentiful. Every company has ideas. Every person has ideas. Probably everyone in this room has a lot of ideas what you can do tomorrow, next week, next quarter, next year. Ideas are usually available, but they're not worth that much just as an idea. So you have to take this idea and develop it into something more meaningful, something that can create or does create value to the company. And that is the process that we call idea evolution. Yeah, we get from idea to measure. A measure is something where we take an idea, we run analyses, we interview your people, we think about how could, for example, the time to first contact, you know, like when we're in a B2C company and your salespeople, they're reaching out to leads. How fast do they do that? We analyze that. We look at how fast is your team? What's the industry best practice? What is your technical setup? We look at all that, and then basically we say, okay, this can be improved in this way, this setup, so that at the end of the day, at the end of like 1 week looking at, we get to impact that can then be realized. So what we deliver, like within a week after running all these analyses, is basically a very clear implementation plan, how your team, how your sales team can actually get to implement a better time to first contact. We map the resources it takes, the changes you have to do, and when you can actually see impact from this. And it sounds super simple. To be honest, in most cases it is, because you need the ideas and your team has them, and then you need some brain power to look at, okay, how do we get this idea transformed into something that we can see in terms of euro values. And when we look at the whole 10-week duration of a Phoenix project, we usually start with a super wide funnel. We look at how can we get as many ideas as possible collected from various perspectives. So we do a workshop with salespeople, marketing people, everyone involved in commercial activities. They sit down, let it be an hour, half a day, a whole day, you don't need much longer, to just collect ideas. So after one day, you have ideas. But again, ideas, plentiful, they're not worth anything. So what we then do is something we call internally heat maps. If you ask Rainer about heat maps, he loves them. And heat maps, essentially, they have one purpose. It's a scale of feasibility, high feasibility, low feasibility, and impact. High impact, low impact. If you create a heat map, it becomes super easy for the involved teams, the managers, everyone working on this project to see what are the measures that have high impact and are highly feasible to be implemented, and what's the rest. The rest you don't care about. All those ideas that don't have impact and are really hard to implement, it's nice to have them written down somewhere, but you don't focus on it. What you want to focus on throughout the remaining 10 weeks are all the ideas that are in the top right-hand corner. High impact, high feasibility. And then during the 10 weeks, the tandems, so your experts, our experts, they sit down, they look at all the ideas in the top right-hand corner of our heat map and develop them further into something that can be implemented. Comes in the steer code format. Yeah? So we don't work in isolation and present you with a list of like 10 ideas that can be implemented. We actually, during the time that we work and run these analyses, we involve management and leadership so that we don't work on something in isolation and then after 10 weeks present you with a list and you say, that's great, but our direction is completely different and this doesn't help at all. Yeah? So in a weekly time frame, we present updates and we involve everyone who's taking decisions so that we can ensure that the analysis and implementations we come up with are in line with the company's strategy. And then at the end of the day, what you get, again, implementable measures. We have 5 stages when looking at ideas or measures. Of course, 5, yeah, we as consultants, we like and we love structure that's within each project. So from long listed, as I said, it's just an idea. Prepared, that's what we call measures that can be shown to someone who's in charge, to someone who's making a decision. Because we have done the analysis and we can explain you to a very high degree why this measure makes sense or why it doesn't. And then you as the person in charge can say, I like it, let's do it. You can say, no, I don't like it, let's not do it. Or you can say, I don't know yet, please look into that direction, please run this analysis, and please speak to this person in that room, because that person has an opinion too. And then it's basically like a cycle that we repeat over and over again during the 10-week time frame that we have. Then we get to the authorized level. So you say no or you say yes. So it's essentially a binary outcome, which is also really good because at some point we really pressure you to make a decision to either discard it or to continue working on it, because we only have 10 weeks, right? So we don't want to spend too much time on measures that are nice but are not really hitting the nail. And then the big question is, how do we get from authorized to implemented? Our goal is to work on measures in a way that our marketing experts, for example, they give your team a very clear instruction on how to achieve it. That in some cases it's much harder than we think it might be. In some cases it's also much easier than we think it is. And I'll show you in the end some examples where we looked at ideas, when we turned them into measures, and then provided like an implementation guideline on how to actually do it. And because we are so lucky to work with a portfolio of a lot of companies, we see things that work, we see that things that don't work, and just in the panel with Giorgio and Vanessa and Arash, we always learn from things that work, but we also learn from things that didn't work in the past. And then essentially that's like everyone's like CEO, CFO's dream. Measures become visible on the P&L, and that's kind of like what we aim for at the beginning of the project. So we help with both that, long listing and preparation. We help with both that, like when you have it authorized, how we implement it. And from a chart perspective, when we just look at this is usually like how a Phoenix project feels to me as a project lead. When I look at that, I see we have a big ramp up of ideas. And again, ideas are plentiful. They don't really mean that much. But then after week 5, we see like the first measures come to a level where you as the leadership team say, that's exactly what I want. I believe in it. Let's do it. And so you can see that over the course of the week, like the first half is really just ideas, analysis, interviews, refining these. And then at some point you get to measures that are much more concrete. And the great thing is, in every project that we've run so far, you always see some impact coming towards the end of the project. Because some of the things we look at, it's not rocket science. For example, the example I gave about contact speed within your sales team. If you ask our sales team about 3 things they would look at, I think contact speed in a B2C context would always be there. Yeah? So they always look at these kind of things. So we will always find measures that have high impact, high feasibility, but also create a return within the project's duration. And I think that's then where it all comes together and makes a lot of sense, because you see, okay, we have this list that is potentially worth 6 million in this chart, but we can also show that we've already done that with one measure or multiple measures that have already yielded something. And that builds trust from all involved parties, yeah? From the people working on it, and also the leadership team looking at measures and saying, do I really believe in the 6 million? If you can show, hey, it actually worked for one already, the trust is actually much higher. Okay, so we have roughly 5 minutes left. Some example, like why is this relevant? Because it works. We've done this with a late stage B2B company, and we looked, for example, at things like automation. And I mean, Vanessa mentioned it earlier from Lucom. If you use AI instead of actual designers to do that, that works. It wasn't Vanessa that we worked with, but it was a similar context. And I think just looking at how automation can improve your processes, that makes a lot of sense. We even have one sponsor, Make. They help us do those things. Yeah? They help us set up process that can be automated. We look at new channels because our marketing team sees a lot of new channels. So for a company that's really good in Google Ads, for example, and doesn't have the skills to look at paid social, or maybe today it would be more TikTok or something even more fancy. If you don't have the skills internally, you are unlikely to look into these channels. But then when someone comes in from the outside and tells you, hey, this channel works really well for you, let's look into TikTok. We can show you how it can work. And that's what we've done here. And then also like a typical, let's change service providers. Let's switch from one provider to another, same quality, better price, makes a lot of sense. And it's a no-brainer idea. I think you're probably all like, oh, okay, well, tell me about it. We've done it a couple of times. That's true. But in a lot of cases, we see that people are just like narrow-sighted on their daily activities, and they miss those opportunities. So that's where we come in. We try to help. In many cases, it works. B2C. We worked with a company that did not personalize email campaigns. They didn't use engagement data. And when our marketing specialists, when they look at it, they're like, well, you can do it that way. There's also a better way to do it. And then you identify those things. Sales outreach, when you realize that, and it's a true example, when you realize that some leads are being contacted only like once and then discarded, and you hear that the industry best practice is at least 5 touches or more, then you see opportunity and you realize, okay, let's maybe call those leads again. The conversion rate is probably going down by each contact attempt, but still there's value in not discarding leads right away after one contact. So those are like a list of things, and I'm always amazed by, like, when I present it, I feel a little bit stupid because I'm telling you things that sound like no-brainers, but effectively they make a lot of sense and they helped us to reach those goals to you and or reach these goals, and that's why I want to show this again. It doesn't sound like rocket science, I know, but just taking the idea within a structured process to something that can be implemented, bring in some outside expertise to get you like this idea process rolling, have some support when it comes to developing an idea into something that can be implemented, can be super powerful. And we have 4 minutes, and you as the audience can be the deciders whether you spend the 4 minutes on Q&A or if you want to go to an early lunch. That's up to you now. So let's see if we have questions. Yes?
Yeah. How about the ambition setting?
This was on. Maybe you can give him the microphone. So the question is, how does it work with ambition setting?
Yeah, because collecting ideas, that's bottom up, yeah? So let's see how far we go, but usually you start with a, let me say, strategic gap, yeah, that needs to be filled. So you did not mention that process, so can you elaborate a bit on this a bit?
We usually do that, ambition setting, within the first workshop. So after we understood what your team tells us about your organization, then we sit down with leadership and potentially also the participants of this workshop and say, after you told us everything that you've told us today, we believe that we can together achieve this impact. And then we set like a goal and a stretch goal. And that's essentially how we together come up with like ambition setting in the beginning.
I would even like to add one thing, and that is sometimes you just have a goal, right? You just need it because otherwise you're bankrupt, for example. And then you have a very clear goal. But if that is not the case, if you don't have that external, real hard goal, it's always good to just set one, because I mean, we're all human and we just like are better in achieving something if we have a goal and then we run after that. So we would always support that the management sets a goal and argue and puts an argument behind that.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Something that I've experienced similar as well. But yeah, I wanted to ask, like, in the discovery stage, do you also have frameworks or practices like Lean Canvas or Google Sprint?
I mean, yes, we do, not those that you mentioned, but our teams, and to be honest, it's a little bit different depending on the teams involved, but every team has a bit of like their own way of looking at things, and that's more similar between like marketing and sales, and then product and tech is a little bit different. The cool part about it is like we try to combine, for example, myself, I'm in the digital consulting team, we are more like a standard consultant. I don't know anything about marketing and sales, but I know about like those techniques and frameworks. And then we have our experts like within marketing and sales, and bringing that together, applying like interview techniques, getting ideas like to the next stage. That works with the help of like standard frameworks. So we don't reinvent the wheel, to be honest.
Did you get to a point where, let's say, the low-hanging fruits were not enough? Because sometimes, I mean, there are some things you can do and obvious, but then if the gap is too big, you probably need to think about the business model, and how do you deal with that?
Yes, we actually had that, where the sales approach that we witnessed from a company that we worked with was so different from what we perceived as the right thing to do, that we told them, look, what you're doing right now, we can try to change it a little bit and improve it partially, but it's never going to hit your ambition level. So we recommend that you actually scratch your current approach and switch it to like a different way of doing sales. And we're actually currently transforming their sales team together with them.
But one more from my end. You touched on the access, impact, and viability. Now you got me wondering, what's the color code then, if it's a heat map?
So for us, like we basically have red, which is like don't touch, low impact, low feasibility. You have yellow, which is if we're done with the green stuff, we're going to look at the yellow ones, but we don't really. And everything that's in the top right is for us is green, and that's what we chase after. And usually you'd be surprised by how many things you can find that end up in the top right-hand green corner if you just spend enough time looking and asking people. Because as I said, like ideas, I think they are plentiful. Everyone in your organization has ideas. It's just that people get at some point maybe frustrated. They think, oh, I've shared this idea 100 times already. They probably know it. They might, but they also might not. And that's why like getting ideas in the top right-hand corner is actually something that we experienced in the beginning. It's actually the easier part of the project.
Maybe, again, if I'm allowed to, two little comments on actually both the topics. One is we surprisingly often see so many low-hanging fruits that are just like not implemented. And yes, there should be more. And as a consultant, you always want to prove yourself and show all the additional super smart stuff that you come in with. But the fact is, you go into any company. I mean, you step out of that door, you go into any company. There is a lot of value that is just like not taken. And to get that cork off the bottle and to make that happen, that is already so much value. And I bet each of you knows in your own company or in companies that you know, yeah, of course, there are these 10 things, we could or should do them, and we're just not doing them. So to get that out of the way, that I think that is already a huge step. And when we come to the heat map, it's very important really to this way understand what you should not yet do. And there's always this hunger for the big things, for the silver bullets. And we're actually, with each company we're working with, we are having this discussion, should we rather go for the big things that are harder to implement, or rather for the smaller, simple stuff? And then very often CEOs or CFOs tell us, so, yeah, but this alone, that will not get us where we want to be. Yeah, that's true, and we should look into that, right? But actually, and it's harder work to do all, like many small things, but my experience from doing that type of projects, like for a decade or more, is that actually gets you to your results probably even better, to do all the improvements that you need to do. And we know, I mean, we all probably some link to the startup world. We know that many small improvements get you to your goal, even though it's a lot of work.
I think
I have a question. What are the main factors that are going into feasibility? What do you consider?
Really good question. It also depends a little bit what workstream we're talking about. Of course, you like a measure that is intended to reduce the tech infrastructure's complexity has different considerations than looking at something that, for example, increases like the sales contact speed. So feasibility is something we look at. Does the organization have the right skill set to do change? Which teams are involved? Yeah, so usually you need some other teams as well that help implementation, for example. And budget. Is there actually a chance that we invest into something, or is it like how high is the capex that we might need to invest? What other resources do we have to invest? So those are just like 3 examples, and then depending on the context, we look at many more, but also not so many more, because we want to get through it in this like 10-week time frame. And if we just run one analysis, then it's also like the payoff is not right. So we try to balance this between two you like have a good like 80-20 approach at the end of the day.
One quick follow-up question. Do you have repeated success stories with the same company? Or is it a one-time endeavor, you pick up all the low-hanging fruits and that's pretty much it?
No, it's actually, so the examples, the sum is from a variety of clients that we worked with. And actually, the early lunch I anticipated is now like a 12 minute lunch. So I suggest that if you have more questions, stick around, either here or in the lobby. For everyone else who's hungry and wants to leave, feel free to do that just now, and then we'll pick it up in the lobby with more Q&A. Thank you.